All right, so the next step here, guys, is cylinder head disassembly. Now, there's a couple of things you got to remember. There's valve keepers and valve locks in here, they call them. To break those loose, a lot of times what we want to do is, if the head is dirty and has a lot of varnish, we want to use solvent to clean that off. And also, to break these loose, you want to use a piston pin or a socket or something and a soft hammer. And you want to just put the socket, we don't want to hit the valve stem, we want to hit the retainer. So we want to take a socket and we just want to lightly tap on that to break that retainer loose. Now your head will be sitting on a set of headstands. You don't ever want to lay this on the bench like this and smack on that, because it can push the valve down, it can actually bend the valve. So you want this on a set of V-blocks or headstands or something when you do this. Once we get that done, we're going to take our valve spring compressor and we're going to remove the valve spring. So this goes on the valve itself, and we're going to run this down onto that valve, and we're just going to simply compress that spring. So we get this snug on here, we situate it. So then we just engage our tool. Now you'll notice that you'll feel it kind of pop loose there, especially with the bigger performance springs. So we're just going to take and run that end just far enough to get our keepers off. You don't want to over compress that spring, because there's a valve stem down here and you might damage that. So once you get your keepers out, there's the keepers, then we just let the compressor out and we very simply remove our springs and retainers. Now again, these are wear-mated parts, so it's really important that you keep these springs and retainers and so forth in order. So we're just going to line our springs, retainers up, keep them in order, and then of course the valve, you just remove the valve out of the cylinder head. Now if the valve doesn't want to come out of there, like sometimes they don't want to, this is getting tight, don't force that valve out. There actually can be a burr on this that we need to take care of. So you want to just take a regular file, and we want to take, you pull the valve out slightly like this, and we just want to take and file that burr off there. You notice I had a hard time getting that out. It just didn't want to come out. So I'm just going to file this slightly, just to knock off any burrs, because as the rocker arm rides on there, it can kind of mushroom the head of the valve sometimes. And of course, forcing that out through a valve guide can actually damage the valve guide. So once we get that off, you'll notice that it's still pretty tight. So I'm not going to force it. I'm going to file that until I get it out. Now that we've filed the burrs off, the valve comes out nice and easy. So there's your valve spring, and your keepers. And you'll notice that sometimes you have shims below here. You also, if they have shims on there, you want to keep those shims in order.